Chairman of the Property Committee, I will call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. We have an 13 item agenda. Certification of open meeting law requirements have been met through proper posting. First thing we'll do is elect officers. I will open nominations for the position of chairman of this committee.
I nominate Dan Schrader.
We have a
second.
nomination. We have a nomination and a second. Is there any other?
You don't second nominations.
Okay.
No.
Any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for, who's that, Schreiner? Dan Schreiner.
Now we need a second to that motion.
That we do.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Open nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Robert.
Yes. And for those of you who don't know, Adi's real name is Robert.
And he would rather you call him Robert than
I got an earful on that one.
Any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Same motion. Close nominations and cast unanimous ballot.
I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. The position of secretary, I'll open nominations.
Nominate Mr. Miller.
May I ask a question before I,
We were just discussing that.
do we have someone taking notes?
Presently, we have Sam doing minutes.
Is that will be a permanent thing?
Well, as permanent as we can get in today's world.
Dan did it before, so.
Huh?
Dan did it before, right?
Dan used to do it.
But I-
Comments about that before?
You can.
I made the statement that as a committee member and secretary that has to take minutes, it makes it difficult at best to participate in the meeting. And I would appreciate it if the county clerk's office continued to supply someone to take the minutes, and the secretary of record would be responsible for documenting their accuracy with a signature after they've been adopted by the committee.
We probably would send them to the secretary beforehand to see if there's any editing before we send them out, yes.
Yeah, I would go along with that. I think I would agree with Dan that you can't participate and do a good job both ways. You just can't do it.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
He's gonna be chair.
Hearing none, I'll move that nominations be closed and a unanimous ballot be cast for Dick Miller for the position of secretary. Need a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting as distributed.
I'll make that motion about as printed.
I'll second it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. The public comment period. Members of the public have 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. And if you want to comment and are not here in person, you can comment by calling 715-538-1770. And you're welcome to do so.
We don't
Your comments must be limited evidently to the items on today's agenda. We'll give that, I know there's a 15-minute block of time, but we'll wait a couple of minutes before we proceed with the agenda.
Just give the telephone number again.
The number again is 715-538-1770. I think we'll proceed, that we can take time out if someone does call or comes in. The next item on the agenda is the Samuels Group, and Kurt, you're up. And he brought his hard hat today. He must be expecting problems.
Sorry, it was out.
Only if he puts it on.
Well, good morning, everyone. What I do monthly is
Push your
come in and
button.
give the committee. Oh, sorry about that. What I do monthly is come in and give the committee a detailed update on how things are going, issues that are happening on the job, progress. I thought that maybe today, since we've got some new members, I can walk you through some detail of what we've done already. And then I would maybe bring you up to speed a little bit better on the project, and then get into some of the details if that's okay with you guys. The project in general, we've bid in multiple bid packages. So we bid out the demolition of the old school. We actually worked with the city to bid out the street work that happened in Hobson. Then we did a early footing in foundations package and excavation package, and then we had another package which was the balance of the project. So all of that work has been awarded to those contractors, and they're under contract. And the process of what they do right now is that they bid on the construction documents that we put out. When they bid on those construction documents, then that contractor is responsible to submit what we call shop drawings or submittals to the architect of record, which is Venture. And what that is, it's their internal documentation that it is in compliance with what was specified for given portions of the project, whether it's a glass manufacturer, door manufacturer, mason, down to all the details that they're going to use for their materials. So that process has been underway for several months, still underway with some of those vendors as we start to get some of that information in. And then that is either approved or rejected by Venture, and that's a process that happens continually with our team, design team, and the contractors. So that's an ongoing process, and some of that generates RFIs. So while we're building the project, there are RFIs, which is a request for information that a contractor can ask some questions about clarification on the design elements of the project. There's also questions and items that come up during that submittal and review process about clarification on documents. And those clarifications of the RFIs or through the submittal process can generate what we call a construction bulletin. And what a construction bulletin is, it is a document that identifies either clarification or further direction from the design team to those contractors. And those construction bulletins can be either an add-in cost, they can be a deduct in cost, or they can be a net no change in cost, okay? And we've had several construction bulletins issued to those contractors that we were anticipating to reduce some scope and save some money, which we have. We've also got some construction bulletins now that are out for pricing that potentially may have an impact in additional cost. And a couple of them, there's some questions on some of the sound ratings of a few of the doors in the courthouse for obviously privacy purposes, and we're getting some clarification on that. There are some skylight elements in regards to the sizing of the skylights that are in the housing area for some curb elevations that may impact some pricing. We're still working on getting that finalized. And then there's also some elements that we're dealing with on some proposed changes on the AV system. Tim has been very helpful in diving into some of the AV components of that we're anticipating some savings on those CBs. So I tell you all of this to explain to you that I don't have CBs to bring to you today with pricing, but I do anticipate that those CBs will be coming up here in the next month. I anticipate next month we'll have some CBs with some pricing for you to evaluate. Some of them potentially will be some savings. Some of them will be some adds in cost potential. Some of the CBs you don't have to accept. Some of them will be decisions that you can make and say, we don't want to do that. Like the ratings on the doors, you may very well say, hey, we don't think we need to increase the ratings on those doors. Some of them you may say, hey, that makes some sense to invest in a higher rating of sound attenuation for the doors. So I kind of wanted to explain to you the process of where you are in the project. Some of you are new to the project. Others of you have lived through all of those processes, and now we're really into that, what we call as contract administration phase of the project, where we're managing what's already been bid. We're dealing with issues that may come up in regards to questions raised about the documents or issues that come up with supply issues from our contractors. So that's what you're going to be dealing with over the course of the next 18 months while we're wrapping up the project. So that's what I'll be bringing to you guys in regards to those elements. And if you have questions outside of the meeting, you can ask me. We don't have to wait till here. If you guys have questions during the month, feel free to reach out to me. Yeah.
Kurt, just like with the door thing you're talking about, was the appropriate door should have been in the bid originally, correct?
So
So
the
why
way
are you changing it now?
So the way you look at those, it comes up when our door manufacturer looks at that. They'll see what was specified, and the door would work, right? But the door provider can come back and say, hey, we would recommend putting a higher rating door. So it's a suggestion. You don't have to make that decision, right? But though that review process takes place, it's good to identify that at that point and say, hey, that makes some sense. And there are about 7 doors right now that we're looking at that we think make some sense to increase the STC rating on that. And like I say, next month I'll bring that to you and say, hey, here's the cost. Does this make sense to invest this additional dollars or not? But you're right. The doors that are in there, they would function the way they are. It's just trying to curb that issue before we would occupy.
But in design, they should have caught that almost in design that if
Not always.
If
I
it's
think that-
needed now.
I think-
I'm just saying, shouldn't have the engineer caught that when he designed it?
Yep, I think that's a fair question. It's asked on every project, and that's the reason that we earmark a contingency, because they aren't going to catch every detail. Okay, and there's elements in regards to the design that are not going to be identified specifically that do need to be clarified, and some of them may be a cost, some of them may not be a cost. But it's a great question. It's a matter of what elements of those details should be caught, and what would have you paid for the additional cost if it would have been in there. You would have paid more for those doors if they were specified in there initially. We just want to make sure that you don't pay an exorbitant amount because you're doing it post-bid versus when you would have did it during the bid process. So it's a good question. So other questions on the CB process? I just want to clarify that for you. So CBs are issued to all of us, and I've told Venture not to issue those CBs to all of you until we get pricing and we can define them to you, because you're going to look at it and go, this is confusing. What are we even looking for? So my intention is I will bring you that CB, and then I will bring you the pricing once we have all that pricing laid down. So that's what you can anticipate over the course of the next few months. The CB element, and I know we'll probably talk about that later in here, is when you want to make those decisions, that's what that contingency dollar amount is used for. And we don't have any contingency because of the budget element that we have. And that's why at that board meeting, when you all were brought in new in April, I had suggested to table that discussion about ARPA funds. I think it's something that you do need to bring back, because you do need to have a contingency. I'm not saying that you'll spend all of it, but there will be some of the dollars that will be spent, and you're going to want to have some money allotted for that. In the original budget, we earmarked about 3%. You typically see 3 to 5% contingency to carry on a project of this size. And 3% of 40 million is still a big number. $1.2 million. It doesn't mean that you'll spend all of that. And from the ARPA side, you will have all of those unknowns known by the end of next year, and you still have some time to be able to identify that. So I'm sure we'll get into that in the future. So that's the CB process. I did want to give you some other updates. We are at 235 days without a lost time accident, which is a big component for your ODIP. And I kind of explained that at the board meeting, but the owner direct insurance program is that we as the county, you as the county, I look at it as a team, we are carrying the workers' comp policy for this project through County Mutual. And the benefit of that is that if there are no claims or if there are limited claims, the premium that you pay, there is a dividend that comes back to you at the end of the project that you otherwise would not have been able to achieve or receive if it was bid another way. And some of those numbers that I've had on other counties that on that dividend check have been pretty sizable, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So hearing 235 days without a lost time accident is great. We have a lot of people out there doing a lot of good things. We have several people that are doing daily site and safety audits on the project to ensure that it is a safe site. So I thank all the tradespeople that are doing that out there, and they're doing a great job. Up some milestones. The week of June 13th, you will see another delivery of precast for the second floor of the housing. You can see that on that northwest corner. That's where our housing unit is. They've already started that second level of masonry there to get to that bearing height for that second floor. Excuse me, the second level of the precast that's going in there. Again, that's scheduled for the week of June 13th. Mid-July is when we have the other precast deliveries that will be in that courts wing that will be connecting us to the courthouse. So you're seeing the masonry go up very well. There's a lot of things that have gone into the ground. If you haven't walked the site, please stop by our job trailer. Our superintendents would get you the proper PPE, hard hats and safety glasses, and walk through there. It will blow your mind to see all the things that are under the slab in there. A jail is a very unique and it's very intricate in regards to all the infrastructure that's under the slab there. So it may not look like there was a lot that's done under the ground. There's a ton of work underneath the ground that's done there. So. And the other thing is that we're working on part of that ARPA was the furniture element. We are finalizing some furniture pricing. So we went through and met with all of the departments, and we're coming up with the furniture budget because we had an earmark of that that had been consumed because of the over budget, and that's really what the funding for the contingency and the furniture element would be from the ARPA dollars. So, any questions for me? Anything you'd like to see me change in regards to our updates? If we get to a point where you guys want to start taking a tour out there, once we get more of the structure, we could do it as a group. I would encourage that you do it individually because you could spend more time out there, but I do want to make sure that you feel informed and involved in the process. So,
You mentioned earlier skylights, and correct me if my assumption is wrong, but the state mandates a certain amount of natural light
Yes.
for people staying in our county jail.
Yeah.
I noticed there are no windows to the north, so my assumption is those requirements are going to be met by skylights?
Correct.
Okay.
So the daylighting that gets into the housing units does come from the roof. It's not just because we want them to get a suntan. If you see around the housing unit, there's actually a chase. There's a mechanical chase that's around the backside of the housing so that Jeremy and his staff can go in and work on elements without getting into the secure perimeter. So the secure perimeter of your jail is actually one wall inside from the exterior wall, and then there's a chase that goes around that they can come in and get to all the valves, get to all of the sanitary connections that are in there that are needed to be without getting into the secure perimeter. So that's a good point to be brought up, is that those skylights are a requirement from the DOC for natural lighting for the residents there, for the inmates.
Has there been discussion in regards to, and Tim would be involved in this maybe, discussion regarding the location of the television station, IT, and that sort of thing?
So currently, right now, I don't know how it's got the name, but the decor room in the second floor, and I don't know how familiar you are with the floor plan, was earmarked for the new county boardroom. This wasn't this proper size, and that the TV station has some space carved out in that location because of the video or the recording that you guys do for those elements. And then in the renovation of the existing building, there were a couple conference rooms that were in there as well that we were gonna be able to do some videoing of those elements. So Tim has been involved in that process as well as.
So they're still gonna be housed down here though?
Yeah, well, we're moving them into that different section that's in there. So maybe you want to elaborate on that, Tim?
Could you, Tim?
Oh, thank you. The existing building remodel plans were just put together to get a number.
Right.
But it is the plan to move the TV studio up and out of this space. But that's not set in stone because the property committee and the powers that be and the stakeholders still have to go through, figure out that design for the new building, the remodel of the old building, and where people are gonna go. Although, IT has already claimed the DA's office, so let's not modify that. We're gonna go market once it's evacuated.
So to bring you up to speed, Dick, there was a layout that we did of the existing facility of renovation of moving some spaces, and there were some spaces where there was some walls that were relocated. There were others where we were just doing an upgrade of finishes rather than being a total gut. And obviously that's been impacted by where we are budget-wise. And that's why Tim is saying, where are we at the end of the project, what funding is available? Those elements will have to be determined. But
The plan as it is in the existing proposal that was made for the renovation and connecting it to the decor room was that one of the two storage closets would be converted into a networking TV studio closet. They would have their TriCasters and broadcasting equipment in there, and then a little closet that goes off of that for storing things. And then there's a closet across from where the county clerk's office is going to go in. There's an office space there. There's actually two of them. And there would also be able to broadcast from that location as well. So for these committee meetings, instead of having to go in the great big room, you could have it in that smaller space that you're able to communicate a little better. And then that would also be televisable from that same setup in that little room. Now, where their other studio would be, that's completely open at this time, yeah. And as is this proposal here, because part of that is new building, part of that is old building, and we don't really know how that's all gonna play out yet.
So we'll get them out of here, out of the basement then.
That was the plan, but all plans are subject to financial availability.
I would like to just suggest something for our chair and maybe the chair of the whole board to get together. And being that we have 10 new people on here, and when you talk about anything, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep.
Conceptually, visually, we can't even visualize it because we've never seen a plan.
Sure.
Nothing's ever been out there. It would be nice to give us some kind of update on, or just start out with, so we can see the plan. So when you bring things to us,
Sure.
we know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Right now, it's kind of like it's kind of everything's going over our head. And it'd be nice to get caught up to speed with what your original idea was, where you are, where we can cut money, where we can save, where we can't.
it's a good point. One of the elements that we will have to involve the sheriff with, because I know there's elements of the jail that he doesn't want in a public meeting for security purposes, is a layout of the jail. So maybe we do it individually through the sheriff's portion. Obviously, the other public areas are a non-issue. But I can touch base with John and Dan and come up with a way to get that accomplished with all the new members so they can see the floor plan. And maybe we start with this committee because you guys are going to be intimate with working with it. So back to kind of the process of what happened when the project started is that the property committee was authorized to oversee and approve all the process of the building, right? And the change order process that we had identified was that if there are change orders that are less than $25,000 in size, we could make those recommendations to the contractor during the month rather than waiting a month and hold up progress and then bring them to you. And that would be the way that we would continue to factor. So to your point, getting you guys intimate with the floor plan would be good. So
In regards to your statement about timing with change orders, and we've talked about it in the past, I firmly believe that at some point in this process, we're gonna need to meet more than once a month.
Yep.
And I will defer to you on when that needs to occur.
Sure.
But because of the timing and making a decision once a month at a certain point in this project isn't gonna cut it.
Yeah, especially if something comes up and I need to have you guys get together. And if we can do that on a, just get a hold
Could
of
do
you
it
and,
as a-
hey, can we meet in the
as-needed
next week or
basis.
two? Sure, that'd be great.
Speaking of that, go ahead.
I was just gonna echo what Audie was saying, just a floor plan.
Yep.
If we could get a PDF of the simple floor plan, I don't need all the drawings,
Details,
obviously.
yep.
But a simple floor plan with maybe along with that, the project plan for who's moving where, who is planning on moving where, and
Sure.
how is that all gonna come to be over what time period. That would just give me a really good overview
Yep.
of, obviously there's costs involved with moving departments and
Yep.
would be really good to get that, those
Absolutely.
details.
Will do.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think before Kurt leaves, can we discuss next meeting and time? I know it's on, because I think we all you might have a say on that.
Yeah, if it's, if we're talking that you guys want to do like the third Thursday, if that works first thing in the morning, that's kind of what we had set up.
So that'd be the 16th.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that, I think it's important
Is
to
it
have
already on the sheet
property
that way?
meet
No.
prior to the county board meeting.
Yeah, so does that work this month? Would that be before county board?
Yep. County board meets on the 20th,
But that won't always be the case.
correct.
Yeah.
Third Thursday won't always be before the county
So
board.
should we do the second Thursday?
That's got audit and.
Got law enforcement on the second Thursday.
Okay.
I
What
think,
about the second Wednesday? That's an open date.
well, that's highway summer training.
For next week.
For next month.
That month.
Yep.
but-
Well, could we do the 15th for June and then maybe schedule, because the 15th would give me a little bit more time to price those CBs. Does that work?
Highway committee's on that day.
They're at 7:30 though.
I can do it later in the morning on the 15th if you wanted.
Are you usually done by 9?
I've got a feeling it's gonna be kinda long the day before.
Yeah,
Either we're gonna be doing road,
that's on the 14th is the road
yeah,
viewing.
both days we thought we'd go north one day and south
Yeah.
one day. So that's gonna get to be some kind of longer mornings for sure.
Well, we meet at 7:30, so we should be out of there by 10.
I mean,
But John, where are we gonna go look at all the
We're
roads?
gonna do the second
That's
half
the
of the
day
tour.
That's on the
That's
14th.
the day before.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Yeah.
The 15th, I could come late morning if that works.
How late?
11, if you want to do 11, does that give you time, or 10 o'clock?
Oh, Wednesday's a bad day for him, right?
What's that?
Wednesdays are bad for you, right?
But I can make it work if it doesn't get, if I'm out of here by 1.
Does 10 o'clock work on the 15th? 10 a.m.?
At 10 a.m. did you? That would be great for me, but I'm one voice.
Sounds good.
Okay.
10 a.m. on the 15th?
And then the only other thing that I think you may want to put as kind of a standing item on your agenda as we start to look at the CBs is that there may be possible action on pricing or something like that. I know right now there's something on there about bids. We won't be dealing with any bids, but it would potentially be pricing on construction bulletins, and that would be kind of a standing item so that if there is action, we may need that there. So,
Get that?
I go, can I just ask one question? I think it was day before yesterday, I got another construction bulletin. Was
Yeah.
it from Steve?
yep, that was the one that was referred to. One of them was dealing with keying, so 28 was dealing with keying. That should be no cost. What they did is they had a keying meeting, so they identify all the ones that need to be keyed, and then it's coming back and documenting how they're going to be keyed. And then there's another one that's going to come out for the AV items. So again, some of those, like the keying one, should have no cost. It's just a document component.
But this committee should still know about them.
Yes,
So what
I will-
I'm thinking is when I get them, I should send them on to the.
What I
five
plan on
committees.
doing is when I meet with them on the 15th, I will give them all the CBs that were issued, an item, and then I can explain them.
Oh,
If I
okay.
send it to them in advance, it's going to be confusing, like what are we talking about keying, what's the issue? Where if I bring it to them and say this last month, these are the CBs that were issued, these were a non-cost, this was just clarification, that's what I intend on bringing to them in June, if
I
that
think-
works for
I
everybody.
think we're up in the 20s or so
Yep.
for CBs.
Correct.
So I don't have to send them on to everybody,
I wouldn't think that would, I think it may confuse. If you guys want to have it right away, that's fine. I was just planning to bring it to you so I can explain it in this meeting. So,
That's fine.
does that work for the committee?
If you get them ahead of time though, Kurt, I think it might be confusing, but it might help us come up with a couple questions.
Mhm.
Rather than if you just give it to us at the meeting, you know how it's gonna be, we'll walk
Sure.
out the door and go.
That's fine either
You
way.
know,
I mean,
if you do both, I think it'll,
Okay.
And it
I'll
is-
send them on to everybody.
Okay,
Relatively simple process to email them out.
okay.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Discussion on funding, possible action. Take it away.
Well, I think the reason that I suggested to table it is that we have 10 new board members that really didn't know, because there was a list of ARPA items that, there has been a priority discussion about where that is. And I don't know if it's starting with going to each committee or if we do it at the board level, but identifying that if we earmark that 1.5 that was in that resolution for contingency, and then there was 800 and some thousand for furniture, it doesn't mean that all of that is going to be spent. It's allocated to a contingency line item, right? And that our anticipated completion is well before the deadline of when you have to prioritize your ARPA funds, because you don't have to have those ARPA funds identified until 2024, December of 2024. And we're talking about having you occupied by 2023, and so you're gonna have a year there, where these could be dollars that are allocated to either contingency or furniture. And from the ARPA side, when you talk about the recovery and the impact of where that is, I don't know if everybody that's new to the board understood the process there, is that they had specifically earmarked some elements that could be used for. And those elements have been removed for the first $10 million of that funding so that you have the freedom to be able to use those dollars where you want to. And these dollars could then be allocated. And let's say out of that $2.3 million, we only spend half of it. Half of that then could be reallocated in that year of 2024 to some of your other elements, right? And that's what the other counties that I'm working with have done that. They've taken a portion of the ARPA and they've put it to their project because their project have seen increases because of the pandemic, right? The pandemic has caused some of these increases, and that's why they've looked at some of those elements. So somehow I want to inform not just this committee, but I want to inform the group of what that contingency, and like Audia said, is, what's the contingency used for? Contingency is used for changes that we may make, just because we decide we want to make some changes, some clarification and some discrepancies between the design documents, or unforeseen conditions. And those elements do come up. And that's why we had earmarked that 3% for the project. But for us to take action, or have you guys take action at that meeting, like you guys had said even here, you didn't know what was going on. You're going to take action on something that you had no history on. Where I just think that those ARPA funds, and somehow the language in there, I think we could identify that at the conclusion of the project, there's a reallocation back to your other priorities, so that the people don't think that we're just taking $2.5 million and it's getting stuck to the project. Some of that funding, if not used, could be allocated to some other causes. So whatever that language, I think there may be some tweaking to that resolution that was tabled before it comes back to the board.
And one of my concerns was a specific dollar amount attached to that resolution, when we were not in any way, shape, or form sure that dollar amount would be
Sure.
A, too much, B, in a worst case scenario, not enough money.
Right.
And then we'd have to come back and look for more funding. So I think it only makes sense to, with whatever resolution we come up with, it has occurrence after completion, so we know what we're short, and I'm gonna assume that we're not gonna make up our deficiencies between now and completion of the project.
Right.
So when the project is done is a better time to determine how much money we need to make up that difference than today.
I definitely agree with you, Dan. It's no,
You know, if we're short, what are our options? And,
Right.
and there's no way I want this committee and the county board to have to go back to another bonding issue to make up the difference. That would be ludicrous when we have this as an avenue of resolution.
And those are the boards that I've dealt with too, they look at it, and I hate to say free money, because we know it's not free money, but it's money that doesn't impact the taxpayers, that can address the issues that are happening because of the inflation and the costs that are dinging those
Yeah.
projects. Right, right.
I want to third what you guys are saying. The board made a commitment, and we have to stand behind the commitment the board made to build this structure. And as we have made commitment in some ways to the highway department for building, I don't think we want to use any of this money for new programming until we know where we stand with our present commitments.
So I guess I will offer, Dan, if it's something that, because I know you have many new board members, and I'm only able to chat with 3 a year, if there are other standing committees that you want me to meet with prior to the board, so they're not hearing about it for the first time, I would offer to do so. If that's something that, John, you have some elements that you want me to attend to kind of bring everybody up to speed, because we do need to inform the new board members so they're not in the dark. And if that means that it happens over the course of the next month, before the next meeting, I can make that happen, so.
And I think, at the very least, we need to make an avenue available to those who are interested in finding out this information.
Right.
A tour, distribution of floor plans, as David said, and make that information available at individuals' convenience. Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to, because, you know, we hear only things on the streets, and I watched some of the meetings before, but exactly how that process went, that it was how the original bid from the engineers, their expectations were 40 million, correct?
It wasn't from the engineers. I was responsible for establishing the budget.
Okay.
And the way we did that is that we took the design elements and we actually put it out to subcontractors and contractors. It wasn't a bid, but it was a budget process in regards to where that market was when we would bid it. And what happened between then and when it actually bid is the numbers just kept climbing. So it wasn't growth of building, it was growth of cost.
Did the other board set aside 40 million, or did they say we'll borrow 42 million? Once they saw the bids came in high.
So we actually borrowed the money before the bids were done to lock in the lower interest rate. Okay, so we had the 40 million that was identified for the Justice Center, and then the $3 million that was allocated for the renovation of the existing facility was in that initial borrowing. And because to lock in the interest rate, I think you guys got like 1.77 or something, I mean, like unheard of. If you would have waited another month or two from the recommendation of Ehlers, you would have seen that jump, and it would have impacted the borrowing over the life of the loan. So we did it based on the budgets that were there. So to say that they could have bumped that after the fact, the borrowing was already done when the bids had been procured.
Didn't they have the contingency in the borrowing and the
We
furniture
did,
in the borrowing?
and we gobbled up the contingency. We had a 3% contingency in there, and the contingency was consumed based on that total project cost of where the bids came in.
So it's just that your estimate came in so low that
Mhm.
they didn't think of borrowing.
Right.
Now I know how it works.
Can I throw one more thing in? I can't get in to talk this way because you got too many options.
Oh, I'll shut mine off.
But, sorry about that, but I wanted to just throw one more thing in. We did actually borrow $43 million, but we were given $46 million. We got $3 million premium, but that $3 million has to be used for paying the interest on our paybacks. So, but that was a premium that we got.
Mr. Chair, I
Also.
got one more question. Paul, basically, is there a date you have to have the first half of the ARPA funds designated?
No, all of it by,
All of it by December 24? Okay. Thank you.
I know Dan asked a little bit about how the language could be written, and I think the language of that resolution is good. It's just a matter of if you wanted to identify that prior to the 2024 date, we would have this number known, right? That you're going to earmark that $2.5 million, not saying that it's all allocated to that, but then it could be distributed somewhere else, that it's not just specific to that project. And I think everybody would feel comfortable with that, because then it could be allocated to other programs, like has already been mentioned. Take care of the issues that you've already started, and then it could be reused. So I think that would be the only thing you would need to tweak potentially.
But there's still the concern if we need 3.5 million, what do we do then? Which is what Dan just said.
Yeah, I guess in a world of unknown cost, I feel real confident in the number that we're looking at for the contingency. Now, I'm not saying that things couldn't happen in this market where something drops out. I mean, I've been very surprised over the last year of the way prices have been going, but you have locked in contracts. Now, there are elements like these doors that will come up and skylights. There's things that we're going to have to manage that they're going to be price impacts. We are going to use some of that contingency, but to say that we would exceed that 1.5, I would be very surprised. I would be very surprised. But I understand the concern. We're in unstable markets right now, so it's justifiable concern.
So, quick question, is there any chances, I know the loans and the banks have all the say-so into when we complete the projects, or, occupancies, all that, to delay some of the renovations or any of those kinds of things that would give us more time to either reallocate from a new budgeting process or otherwise?
So I just want to clarify, the renovations of the addition of the old building aren't even in that number right now, because we've consumed the Justice Center and the renovation dollars. There are no dollars available for the renovation at this point. So to hold them off, we've kind of paused them anyways. We like Tim has said, we got the floor plans done, and that's where they were preliminary floor plans. There's no construction documents there. Those have not been bid. So that's already been paused.
And we will keep it paused until we can
Yes.
figure out how to fund it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, we do have the engineering part of that paid for, right?
We have, you've signed a change order, but we have not told them to proceed. We have not spent, in my mind, we have not spent that money. We've given them the green light to do just the very first floor plans. And we've stopped all the balance of that design because of what happened from the budget. We just paused all of that. So,
What's the total award for ARPA, Trempealeau County?
What was the total for the renovation? 2?
just,
3.5?
yeah, it was 3.5. It depends on what we included in some of that renovation, but it was about that $3.5 million.
In a way, that commitment has already been made, that has to be done, because there are departments that are going to have to be moving. So I think that we do have a larger responsibility to hold on to that ARPA money as long as we can, to see where we stand on all this.
Yep.
Beyond the 2.5 that you suggest, then.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned, what is the pause, because time is our friend right now in terms of, the renovation. Let's face it, this building works. It's here. It's sufficient, but not sufficient. I get it. But if we can pause and figure out a better plan to move and occupy the new building in a way that's not all at once, we win. Yep. So we really need to talk about, that's why I want that plan. What was the project to move, who, when, where, what departments? Again, this is a functional building. I want to make sure that we all use it to the best of our abilities without spending more money than we have to too soon.
Yep.
Because I agree, the ARPA funds, they're there, but it's too soon to see where we push those funds.
But your suggestion is pause on the ARPA money, I think. So is that what I hear you saying?
It's probably both. It's pause on the ARPA money till we get a really good understanding where we sit with the new building.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I get we got to do some renovation, but how and how much and when is the key. Because I think we really need to get that new building finished with the ARPA monies that we can, or we need to allocate, and then we'll see where we stand with renovation.
I agree. Yep. And I think maybe what renovation. It was like a facelift, new flooring, ceiling, some MEPs. Others was pretty significant renovation. And obviously there's a varying cost between one level to the next. So I'll do a layout of what that phasing option would look like so you get a better handle on that.
I do have the preliminary one in my office, that just shows the old courthouse, not the new, just where
I think if
things were.
more of a phased kind of explain, because his question is great, of who's moving.
Comment on that though,
Yep.
too. The pausing on the renovation is one thing, but this whole section here.
That's
of
what
the
I was gonna
building
address.
Needs to be addressed first, where the buildings
Right.
connect. Because land management is gonna get displaced, child support is gonna get displaced, and so is health department. So I need to know where they're going before that happens, because this wall is, part of it is going away. And a whole section of this building is gonna get changed quickly.
Yep.
So that's
No.
gonna have to.
And that connection is included.
Well,
in-
it's, the connection is, but it's.
I understand what you're
Sheriff's
saying.
Department will have to move into the new building, land management potentially into the Sheriff's
Yep.
Department, and where's everyone else going from there? So that needs to be decided before,
Correct.
That's
some
the
of it
priority.
is easy. IT wants to move to the DA's, but the DA's moving to the new building.
Yep.
But Human Services ain't going anywhere.
I'll put
And
a-
we need to figure out where ADRC is gonna move into this building.
I will put a move plan together so you guys all see how things are skipping around.
I just wanted to address the chair, if I might, in the same manner that he just did. Since people are gonna be, once they vacate spaces here to go to new spaces there, or once the building remodel and the north wing here starts to happen, people are gonna have to be moving, so we can't delay decision-making too long on the existing structure, because you'll be pulling my pants down, because I won't know where to connect people to the network and whatnot. So we're gonna have to have some forethought and some serious thinking about that soon.
So that coordination has to be built in.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I request the priority plan and of the move plan, so that we can help decide those priorities. And then where does it make sense to pause? Okay, everybody's got a place, everybody can work, right? You're connected, got Wi-Fi access, whatever you need. And then we can get our hands around what we have to do next, so.
Kurt, is be prepared to deal with this on the 15th.
Yeah, if we can get those PDFs of the floor layout too prior to that, so we
Sure.
can be really study it and look at it, and then we have some really good questions and help make decisions at that meeting would be great.
Yep.
Kurt, can you work with Paul's office to make sure those plans are distributed?
Yep, will do.
I'm gonna say
I
that
got the great big ones that are about 4 by 6.
if you could distribute those to all county board members, that would be safe, I think.
Just a reminder, you have to turn your mics on or off, otherwise, we had no sound there for a while because you all turned your mics on.
They all did when I started talking.
And if I may ask for, I think paper is so much easier to work off from. Because it's easier for me to make notes on it and so forth,
Okay.
so.
Sounds good.
I'll work with Kurt.
Yep. Anything else for me? Sorry I took up so much of your time.
They were good questions and good answers.
If not, we'll move on. Tim, have you
Thanks.
talked enough about AV Tech for the county boardroom?
The reason that was included is because I wanted to go through it with the property committee and then have you pick out the elements that you wanted to see whacked. But they needed that information sooner. The change request has already been put in. I whacked things for you.
Thank you for your whacking.
Maybe to add to the whack, when we come back with the pricing, and maybe I'll get the pricing to Tim in advance, so you get an idea of what those elements were and the savings that you had for that, so I'll work on that from the pricing.
For all intents and purposes, most
you,
of
Kurt.
what was included in the $117,000 budget for AV Tech in the Decorah room is related to the TV studio needing to be able to broadcast from there, but you're going to get multiple points of broadcasting for that price. It's decent. I did ask that they eliminate a lot of the ceiling mics and extra microphones. There's some lavalier mics for traveling around, like you're going to be having salesmen doing presentations. I had them whack that. But if we're only getting pennies on the dollar back for these elimination of these items, because they'll say, well, we already bought that stuff, then we'll just go ahead and include it. But until I get that change back from the project manager, I won't know what this final number for AV Tech in your Decorah room is going to be.
Now, the decor room is the new boardroom.
Yes, sir. We call it Decorah room because that's what is listed on all the sheets, but it'll be the county boardroom. And maybe it'll be named in your honor someday.
Is that second floor?
Yeah, and it's above the main
Entryway,
entrance.
yeah.
It's like the-
Nine.
I want to call it the, would you call it? It's kind of the, not the hangover, but the loft of the entrance of the new construction.
So that's the reason for that agenda item.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, we can move on.
Did I understand that there will be a couple of conference rooms that?
There will be across from where my new office and the treasurer are going to be, there's, I think it's three little conference rooms there.
There
Or maybe-
was they were bouncing between 2 and 3. They wanted, it was either going to be 2 12-person conference rooms or 3 8-person, and I think they were leaning towards switching it to 2 12s.
Oh, okay. I didn't-
And one of them would
The
be,
plan that I have, it still shows.
and
three.
it would include the cameras from here, and then that would feed back into that TV studio, so you could televise regular county board subcommittee meetings without having to go into the big county boardroom. So
I like
hopefully
the
that
idea.
stays in the design for future.
And one of them can be the Decorah room.
If we're so attracted to the Decorah room as a name, I guess.
In case everybody really wants to know, Steve Gens from Venture Architects is the one who came up with that. In the start of the building process, he was looking at Trempealeau County and what is in Trempealeau County. And he saw Decorah Peak and he was seeing all these things, so he labeled it Decorah Room. That's where that came from, if anybody wants to know. He named a lot of the rooms, but we renamed them. That one was left.
Well, historically, the Whole Chunk Nation occupied a good portion of this county, and
Right.
the great
That's where he
one-eyed
kinda
Chief
went.
Decorah, which
Oh,
the peak is
there's two
named
there.
after.
One can
Yeah.
be Decorah and one can be Ho-Chunk. I like that idea. We don't just have to have Packers and Badgers and Wisconsin. We had an article in the newspaper about it, but
To localize the names.
they wondered why we didn't have a Viking room, and there was reason not to. That was in the article too. La Crosse Tribune wrote it out.
Tim, let's have an update from the IT department.
So that means we've moved on.
We have.
Okay, network refresh proposal was over budget, so I had it on here that I may be asking for your approval. We met with the winning bidder, negotiated it from about somewhere between 505 and 550,000 down to 246,000, which is under budget. So I no longer need your approval. My own authority granted previously in the budget process allowed me to go ahead and go forward with that. We had to eliminate parts of the project. Initially, this was a network refresh. I sent out documentation to those of you that weren't here last summer as part of the process of the presentation I made to secure the funding. I have a 10-year budget. It was all about maintainability. And the property committee has tasked me with 4 priorities. Number 1 is security. Number 2 is maintainability. Number 3 is transparency. And number 4 is productivity. So when I'm making decisions, the property committee is, security is number one, and then maintainability with the staff I have is number two. So that's everything I do. We try and look towards keeping it going with the staff I have. I don't want to have to add people, and I don't want to lose the one I have. So this is a process that was approved for this year that's going to allow us to simplify some things for us. We're moving to the cloud for the financial system, so we won't have the I-series in the building anymore. That is in process right now. We are migrating to this new network core so that we can future-proof our network with stuff that my staff understands how to take care of, so we don't have to keep bringing in consultants. It was going to be dual redundant cores between the old building and the new, but the price just got insanely ridiculous. So we eliminated half of it. We will have a redundant core in the new data center so that if one switch fails, the whole building can keep going off that. We will have a high-speed connection back into the old data center where all the backup and archive equipment will reside, but it won't have that same dual redundant core. I had to include switches and access points for the new building in this process, which is what drove it over cost, because I don't know what happened, but 3 years of attending meetings and say I need switches and access points included in the project, they never got included in the project. So I'm taking that out of this project for $246,000. To get years 4 and 5 of support out of the agreement, it's going to go up to $262,000. So my next point about the hyper-converged solution has to come in at least $12,000 under budget in order for me to get that approved. So I'm going to get 5 years of support out of this network configuration. We're going to be able to light up all the connections we need to light up in the new building. We're going to have access points in the new building. The original design called for approximately 170 new access points. We've gone through and we've whacked that down to 59. We are also planning to connect about 700 different network drops. We've gone through and figured out how many we actually need, and I got that number down almost in half. So we were able to get the project in for under $250,000. So I'm pretty happy about that. The equipment has been received already. So that was the other thing. If I waited any longer, if the shelves are bare for networking equipment. So that project is moving forward. We're going to meet in July with the vendor to go through the statement of work and start working on getting that set up. Even though the new building's not up, we want to set it up on a bench, test it, configure it, get my staff acclimated to it, get them all properly trained. Number 2 is the hyper-converged. We received 4 responses to our RFP, which was due on the 16th. 2 of them are under budget and meet all the requirements of the project. Both vendors have agreed with me. I said I'm leaving on June 1st and not back for a while. I verified that their prices are good through mid-July. So we will be meeting with those 2 vendors late June, early July, going through their solution, verifying what the year 6 cost is, what are the maintainability and security elements of this proposal, and make sure we're going to get exactly what we want out of that. And then we expect that'll be in by the end of the year, where we can build it again, set it up on the bench in Dan's old office downstairs in the basement, and get it ready for when the site becomes available to move into. Number 3 on my list. So those 2 projects were $250,000 each. Approval to seek proposals and bids for a replacement phone solution. This fall, the licensing for our existing voice messaging solution that's attached to our Awatsu PBX is no longer valid licensing and would require an upgrade to the system. A proposal's been made by Convergent to upgrade that system, but we feel that, well, for one, we don't have the elements in place to migrate to that solution, and it's an additional money to put towards a system that's now 17 years old. So we're proposing a replacement solution. I've verified concept by going with a hosted voice over IP solution, which would mean that our phones would be in the cloud. Numbers in Whitehall are now portable as of about 16 months ago. So we can port our existing numbers, the 2311 number, my direct line number, can be supported to just about any solution out there. I've looked at 2 vendors, and I got 2 more coming in, just verifying that they can deliver what we need for the cost that we need. What we're going to do, now that I've verified the concept, is I have to form a group of stakeholders to go through, and we got to list out what must the system do, what does it need to do, what is it we want it to do. And there are certain things that I've found in the various proposals so far. I don't have any formal documentation or anything like that. I'm not going through a bid process yet. I just wanted to see that we are able to move forward. Now, this would not be revenue neutral by itself. Right now, we spend about $1,600 to $1,800 a month on our current phone solution, if you include fax lines, direct lines, various numbers that we have through our existing PBX, plus support to Convergent, and the voicemail system. The proposed solution, you're looking at about $2,700 per month. An average $13 per desktop, per phone line that we currently have. Highway has said that they're interested, so we're talking about 200 lines. Fax lines would be replaced in this system as well. So in order to get to $2,700, I have to find at least $1,000 a month in savings. My goal is to find 40 smartphones that we can eliminate from the county, because once you have a mobile phone application that you can run on your personal device, or your laptop that the county provides is your phone, why would you need a county-issued smartphone anymore? And I've already verified, mostly through Human Services Department, they're prepared to eliminate probably 30 phones if they're capable of making phone calls through their laptop. The Sheriff's Department, Land Management, Health have all about 5 apiece. So I've verified now that we're going to hit the mark of 40 without any difficulty. So that savings of about $2,700 a month is going to more than offset the increased cost for this proposed solution. So once I get the approval from you to move forward, my next step would be to get the stakeholders together. We'd work with Paul to identify those persons that need to have a say in what the new phone solution is going to look like. And then we would go out and seek feedback from various vendors that can meet what we're looking for, and we'd identify what we need it to do, and then we'd start having some vendors look at it. Based on what I'm seeing, it's about a 90-day transition. Once you select a solution, you got about 90 days to move over. So we could make a decision sometime early fall, and before the end of the year be on a new phone solution. Questions?
Do you have any suggestions on a focus group that you mentioned earlier on decision on what's necessary in this system?
Well, a stakeholder would be required from the jail, because they have how they tie their phone system together with their staff moving around inside the facility and whatnot is definitely unique. Somebody from Human Services is a requirement. Somebody from Health Department would be. Paul has connections to most of the people that have unique situations and whatnot. We're going to definitely bring it up to the department heads and ask for participation. We don't want to get it to be a too unwieldy group, but generally you can whiteboard a business analysis and you can come up with, this is the things that it must absolutely do. This is a list of what we'd want it to do. This is what we got to have, what we don't got to have. And then you can come up with a list of things that are your criteria and move forward pretty quickly.
So just to recap what I heard you say earlier, so all of the direct interdial numbers that we have are going to be converted to VoIP, and we'll be able to use all of the existing IT infrastructure, laptops, desktops, all that, and with headset technology to use the phones right at their workstation?
Correct.
And there wouldn't be any additional landline hardware that we would have to buy for the new system?
The only equipment would be if you have staff in certain areas that really, really, really love the way they fax now and wanted to keep their fax machine, we'd have to get these little boxes that most of the vendors I've spoken to, they provide them. So then your fax line becomes a $5 a month instead of a $60 a month line. It goes through a network connection, but you plug that phone line into that little box so it can pretend to be a regular line.
You can fax right from a computer, so you're really...
Well, you can and you can't. Depends on how your system's set up, and right now we have that feature for some, but not for others, depending on security requirements.
No, I get it. So it's something you might want to look at because,
Are there
You
other,
fax, just if someone faxes to you, can be coming right into the service through the cloud, just like anything else.
Right, they have both offerings. Most of the vendors I've looked at can offer direct to desktop. Others can have, if you want to send the traditional fax, you can continue to do that. $5 a month.
the technology is available that we could realistically phase faxes out?
Government,
Doesn't like that?
no.
I fax.
That
an
makes
awful lot.
sense,
And
that it doesn't
faxing in
make
my
any
office
sense.
actually goes through our copy machine. That's where it is. E.O. Johnson has it hooked up to the.
And we can have that directed from his desk or to his desk, but there's some hang-ups in the workflow there that make it so it's just not been tenable security-wise. There are going to continue to be some desktop phones. Both providers, one provider for sure said, as long as you keep, if you have 200 lines and you keep the number of desktop phones under 50, we're not going to charge you for the phones. Because there's some desks where people aren't parked at it. So if you're at the front desk in Human Services or the front desk in jail, that's not your permanent location. We can't have people signing into the phone or into their computer there and then have that be their phone, because that would be their extension instead of the extension at the front desk. So anywhere where there's a shared desk, there's going to be a handset. Anywhere in the courts, because we can't connect to the state system with our phone system, they would need to connect to our network with a handset instead of a tablet. So I've got figured out that the court system they need X amount of desktop phones. And again, it shouldn't cost any additional money towards that.
What is your time frame in terms of bringing this new system in?
I'd like to have it in before the end of the year. So once we identify the stakeholders and meet, I'm guessing we'll meet with some vendors in July. And then if the stakeholders decide, well, we're not happy with the people that are in the proposals they made forward, I'd have to do an RFP, which would then slow us down. But if they're like, this vendor rocks, this is the direction we want to go, I'm granted authority to make purchases without having to go through an RFP process. So I just come back to property committee and go, this is who the stakeholders have selected. This is the monthly cost per desk. This is the number of desktops we determined. That's another part of the process. Some people said, why do we even have that number? We might end up dropping about 20 phone lines for all we know, because some people evaluate their workflows and decide, gone. So then the property committee could go ahead and sign off on that. And like I said, the vendors have told me 90 days. I would double that. I think about 180 days is about what reality would be to convert over to a solution like that. But
So moving into the new building it'll be all prepared for that.
it would absolutely be ready by the time the new building's ready to occupy. And the cabling considerations and how many connections I need to light up, I've already included that in my figuring for how that's going to go.
So beyond this committee giving you the authority to move forward, what is it you need?
That's all I need for right now. Because once we identify the stakeholders and sit down and meet, then the next time I meet, I'd probably be talking with you about that.
Okay. Then, I don't know if we need a motion or not, but since there's a question, I'll make a motion that we give Mr. Robertson the authority to move forward, setting up stakeholders and gathering information regarding this move from our current phone system to the one he presented. Or ones.
I read through the whole PowerPoint. Excellent. The way you're going is fantastic. I've been involved with some of these projects, to upgrade to cloud services and voice over IP before. Great work. I second that motion.
Any comments or questions regarding this topic? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Next.
Request for assistance.
I know he's not done.
Request for assistance. So, certain members of the old property committee have been bothering me about my staff looking haggard all the time. So they said they want to give me help. So I was tasked with thinking about how could I get help. Well, one of them is I'm responsible for the technical side of cell phones, hotspots, and smartphones for the county, but department heads still direct who gets a phone, when they don't have a phone, yada, yada, yada. Well, I request audit reports every once in a while, and sometimes there's like a third of the smartphones aren't even being used. And it just, you get a little frosty about that. Like, you know, I would like to have uber authority over that, but I can't even prove that it's needed to have authority over that. So I've asked the assistance of the clerk's office and Tammy, who currently does a lot of the legwork for figuring out the phone bills every month. Well, with this new solution coming into place, she should have less work to do, because figuring out which department knows what is going to be as simple as, well, do you still have 21 lines? Well, here's your bill. So she's going to have extra time in the future. I proposed that she audit the cell phone monthly. We get reports from US Cellular and Verizon, find out, are these phones being used? Can we eliminate this? And then she could stay on top of department heads and ask those hard questions every month, because I don't have time to do that. And Paul's agreed to it.
She also does the troubleshooting, you know.
Yeah.
She goes out to every
Right.
office and teaches them how to use their phones and all that, so.
And we would continue with that as well. We'd like her to be the single point of contact going forward for the phone issues with the new solution as well.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Now, as this progresses as you proposed, our dealing with convergent solutions is going to disappear. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that takes up a lot of Tammy's time. Is our business with convergent?
No, not with Convergent.
Oh,
No, it's that figuring out who owes what all the
No.
time.
I just assumed that since every time I had a problem with convergent, I ran to Tammy and she took care of it.
That's what she would call Convergent, and they come and fix it.
And the same
Eventually.
process is gonna happen going forward.
Okay.
When somebody opens a ticket, like my phone line isn't working when I'm at this location or whatever, they're gonna open a ticket, that'll go right to Tammy, and she's the first level of support.
Okay.
If she can't figure it out, she'll either call the hosted VoIP provider, or she'll work with second level support in my office to handle that.
And as someone who used convergent solution equipment in the past, I would be willing to bet that once the transition is done and people are used to the new system, our problems are going to be greatly reduced.
I love your optimism.
Well, I can say with all confidence, we won't have the issues that we had dealing with convergent solutions.
Let's just try and get through the next 18 months,
Yeah.
Stan, before we get too excited about that.
Now, have you addressed this haggardness you were referring to earlier? I missed something here.
He's transferring that haggardness to our office.
Yeah, I'm moving it
That,
over.
that clarifies that, okay.
They're hustlers. They're always moving quick. So Dan assumes that they're hustling because they're being pressured. But no, they just like to hustle. That's
Yeah. Well, some of them are not smiling while they're hustling, and I'm just assuming that they're unhappy.
all. No, they're filled with joy because they're in IT. We're
Yeah.
the happiest people in the building.
Can I see? Can you explain the hotspot utilization mobile? That's part
Yeah,
of the cell phone? That's your
some
target?
people need to do work from home, and they provide them with hotspots because there's no other way for them to communicate. Or, they make home visits, and they need to be able to connect and do reports from wherever they happen to be. Some of those are well used, like we've actually at times recommended they change to an unlimited plan because they're going way over on their data. Some of those are completely unused because they're only there for like emergencies or whatnot. So having somebody keep an eye on that, much like the smartphones and the cell phones, is going to be very useful for reducing our actual overhead.
Question on that, maybe I missed it earlier, sorry. BYOD program, is that an option?
Well, that's one of the things that's going to have to be discussed with HR. My staff, we used to have multiple smartphones. We're down to one. It's the on-call phone. That will be gone. We don't want it. None of us want to carry a second device. So any solution we select, hosted VoIP, is going to have a BYOD component because there's an application that's embedded in there. So I make work calls. I open the app. I make the call. It doesn't show as my personal number. And then any conversations, messages, videos, anything like that that happens inside that application is all trackable on the back end, so I don't have to have my phone turned in for a FOIA request.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that's come up is some supervisors like, well, I don't want to pay for any smartphones for my department. If that app can take care of it, they can it could be required to come to your job with the smartphone. Now, in IT, that's an easy ask. Requirements of the job, got to have a smartphone. Some departments, I think you're going to see some pushback, and then a stipend is going to come up. But even if you do a stipend at $20 a month, you're saving the county money. So, but that's above my pay grade. That's for board members to decide and HR to bring a proposal forward. But I imagine if you're going to want to keep finding savings, and I think Tammy's going to find some opportunities for savings, one way would be to insist that people BYOD.
Absolutely. I mean, the way
Bring your own
all
device.
industry go, bring your own device, right? All industry is going that direction. Let's face it, everybody, 99% of people have cell phones with data on their phone, and organizations that I've worked with, several, make it mandatory as part of your condition of employment to bring your own device. And then, yes, we will have to budget for a stipend, which is very, very common. And you're right, the number of phones that you could get rid of that we're paying hundreds of dollars for a month, be 20 or 30 bucks, whatever that stipend may end up being. Very good solution. Everybody knows it's out there, everybody does it, so it wouldn't be a shock to any of our team members that, would be requested to use their own device with the secure applications like you suggested.
The areas where it won't work, where a county device is issued, is people that use their phone for evidence, officers taking scene photos, things like that. Department of Land Management has some surveyors and some people that take photos of things as they uncover them. They don't want to have to turn their phone in for a FOIA request, so you're going to get resistance on that. But elsewhere, anybody else that's just using it as a tool to communicate, I think BYOD is going to work just fine.
There's always exceptions agreed on those law enforcement and other areas, but 95% of the phone usage, I think, I'm just throwing out numbers out there, but I think that's a really, really good option to reduce cost and simplify the IT network.
Glad you're on board. Thank you. New issues, the last one is update. Right now, our numbers are finally leveling off for help desk ticket requests. Printing is continuing to plunge. We've hit the 10% reduced printing mark every single year since we instituted the print management solution back in 2017. We had our state GIPA conference in person last week. That's the Government Information Professionals Association in Wisconsin. So Renee, Kathy, and I went to that over in Oshkosh. We found a gentleman that wants to help us save money on our next print contract. So that was worth the money right there. He promised some big savings. And then we also found some solutions. The state had a large presence on security. So they're waking up at the state level on the security. We had 4 fantastic presentations from state agencies on cybersecurity. And so they're really opening up the resources for us, and we're going to be able to participate in some regional and statewide cybersecurity response work and really get our disaster recovery up to speed.
Did presentation was there from, I think, Department of Military Affairs?
They were there. Lieutenant Colonel gave a fantastic presentation and really made it seem like everybody should just join this because it's going to be awesome.
Okay.
So my staff and I were like, do we really want to join a critical response team? That sounds like a lot of heavy lifting, but no, that's how you get access to the training.
Yeah.
So we're going to join up. So, yeah, it was a good, it was nice to get back in person. I got to meet a lot of people and bounce a lot of stuff off of them. Waushara County is working with Samuel's group, building a new jail and justice center, and they're about 9 months behind us. So every time they have a question, they say, well, Trempealeau County's doing it this way. So he's like, I'm glad I got to meet somebody from Trempealeau. So we'll start corresponding and finding out how they're handling their problems. Yeah, we're being held up as an example to other agencies, apparently.
Ruh-roh.
We'll see how it goes. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report. The process, they've fine-tuned the distribution of packets. Renee met with you guys this week, right? And I think we got that
Preliminary.
down. We're strongly encouraging the board members to seek one-on-one help to learn how to do it better. I know, Dan, you're excited to be able to use that tablet and come in and we'll...
I am pretty excited, can't you tell?
Right.
How did it work this time with the property committee? Because you got a packet. Did you go to SharePoint and open it? I also mailed it all to you a week or two ago, but
Yeah,
it was, not you, because yours is sitting right there yet.
Well, now that I got Outlook updated this morning, thank you very much. Having the calendar appointments out there, maybe it's just me getting used to it, but they should just pop up and join, because you accept them. But the way
If you accept, then it goes to your calendar.
right, the way it's coming through though, it's not coming through, well, it's coming through that packet and then you have to click on it. So I don't know if it's not your normal Outlook meeting
I think they just
attachment
fixed that
request.
yesterday,
We
so it
just did
should.
Yes,
When
yeah,
you-
yesterday or day before.
Right, and when you go into your pack, you'll get an email as soon as I click to set up the meeting or whatever, and then the WebEx link, the agenda, and the meeting invite will all be in one email. Then it'll just be in your Outlook email, and then it'll pop up in your calendar
Okay.
once you accept.
I'm sure it'll
It's
work
just
great moving
started
forward now that
yesterday.
I got the Outlook all up. 'cause
Now
it was-
the Outlook's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, Outlook, unfortunately, there were no good answers at GIPA about what we're going to do about Outlook. 2013 Outlook, which is what most people at the county have, is no longer going to function with Office 365 as of April of next year. It's like the drop dead. So we're looking at large expense. We're going to have to double our Office 365 budget. We're going to be going from about 26,000 to 52,000 in order to fix that hole. The alternative is to buy the perpetual licenses, which would be a one-time cost of about 120,000. But Microsoft doesn't want to sell you perpetual licenses anymore. I looked into G Suite, but nobody had any good answers at the conference about how they're dealing with that. I feel a rebellion is coming on. I don't know what consumers are out there demanding subscription-based software, but it's the way the world's going. There were several members that have heard that Windows 11 is the last perpetual licensed Microsoft OS you're ever going to get. They're going to ask for a subscription every month for your operating
That's the
system.
direction of things, that's where we're going. I'll reach out to some other IT contacts I have to see what they're thinking, just, we can touch base later.
Yeah, it's difficult because it's trying to find agencies that understand where I'm coming from with the limited budgets we have. So you could talk to City of Fond du Lac or say La Crosse. Yeah, they're just buying G3 licenses for everybody. So $220 a year per user, including citizen members that only serve on one committee or whatever. I'm like, how can you afford that? So we've patched ours together in a way that most people are like, that's insane. How do you do that? Oh, it's a lot of work, but so yeah, we'll be bringing that as part of the budget process. I'll be bringing that forward, and I will have alternatives available for this committee before I take it to exec finance. But next year's going to hurt. I'm up against it on a lot of different things, so we'll see how that goes. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Tim. Good job.
Jeremy.
Hi, good morning. Before I get too deep, the new board members, well, Dick, you're not super new, but I did talk to the sheriff. If you guys want to go up to the jail today, I can bring you into the jail. I actually have some things I'd like to show you as a committee as a whole, or at least you have a general idea, because I'm having some extensive plumbing issues in the jail, and I'm going to be bringing you a tally next month of how much it's going to cost to fix it, and then you're going to choose if you want me to fix it or not, because we're only going to be in there for 18 months, and I've probably got about $12,000 worth of plumbing repairs that need to get done. And it's either fix it, or I just keep wrapping it in pipe tape and plumber's putty and stuff like that to keep it so it stops leaking, because most of the stuff that leaks into the sheriff's office, into the chief deputy's office, into the detective's offices, which is why at least the new jail is being built on one level instead of above offices. So, and then there's a few things I'd like to show the new people. If you have a few moments after the meeting, I'll bring you through the boiler room and stuff. And
I did a tour yesterday. I didn't go to the boiler room, but I did a tour of the jail yesterday, and they
Okay.
made me aware of some of the issues.
Okay, if you went to the jail, Adi, if you want to go take a look, I can bring you up there. But then I can bring you guys to the boiler room real quick for another thing that I'll be talking about here briefly, so you're aware of. Because you'll find when I come to the podium, it's usually because I've spent money, or I'm going to be asking you for more money that I'm going to end up spending. So, speaking of that, so capital expense projects for next year. One of the things that I found in the process of working with this new construction is, let's say all the bathrooms, the laundry, the kitchen that's in the jail, all of those have toilet paper dispensers, paper towel dispensers, all that stuff. None of that is included in the cost of this building. I need to purchase all that. They will install it. That's how it works. Wasn't brought to my attention beforehand, but that's how it is now. Baby changing stations are included, but toilet paper, all the other paper product supplies are not. That will be a capital expense that I'll need to bring to budget this year that will need to be approved because there's a 12-month out waiting list. So I need to order it now before budget time but I won't spend the money until next year, if that makes sense. So it's ordered now, paid for next year, but that's one of the projects, again, that I'll bring up. It's not a lot in comparison, but it's about 15 grand for all of the stuff that I'm going to need to put all the stuff in, plus fill all of it, all the toilet paper, all that stuff up front. Because the previous committee was also aware that with the new building, my budget is going to go up by like 115% from what it was every year previous to this. Next year, it's going up 66%, and then the year after that, it'll go up another 55% because of the square footage, the amount of product that I have to buy, the amount of cleaning supplies I have to buy, and then plus the cost of everything has already gone up from 5 to 25% over the past 2 years. So that's just an FYI for that there. And that's going to include, like, for the washing machines, the dishwasher, again, all the toilet paper products and dispensers for every bathroom except for in the cells themselves in the jail. Those are that's a whole different mechanism there. So that's something that's going to end up coming up as a property expense up front. So,
Are you including the utilities in that figure?
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
because right now I budget $135,000 a year for this building for electricity. New building's going to be a little bit more energy efficient, but I'm still going to end up going up at least another $100,000 a year just for electricity.
Not
Because
to
it's
mention
square
heat-
footage
Not to mention heating then.
Well, that's a whole separate line item on my budget. That's another $60,000 for this building a year for gas. And then, I got $5,000 a year for garbage. I have quite a few line items that are under my budget. Every single one of them is going up, including my staff, because I'll be having to hire at least one more custodian when the building is said and done too. So mine, Tim, stuff like that, our budgets are going to go up just because of the expense of adding square footage, adding devices, adding all that stuff. So just an FYI for you guys that when it does come time to present you guys with my budget and you see that last year my budget as a whole was $800,000 and this year it's 1.4 million. That's why.
Did you bring this to the attention to the board previously when they were talking about building?
Everybody knows. Yeah. Everyone knew that. I mean, that's just the cost of adding square footage to the building.
Well, that's a no-brainer, but did they take that into account for the payments every year and on the borrowed money and the added expense?
Yeah, it was something that was addressed. So again, it's not coming out of that 40-odd $million. That's just going to be part of that normal budget time that when you get, for here, it's not so bad. I bring it to you guys, you look at it and you say it is what it is. It's when it goes
It's
to
going to
exec
put pressure
finance
on
the
the
next
board to
time.
balance the budget. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Huge pressures.
That's a heck of a hole.
Yeah.
Yep, and then so also for a capital expense that I'll be bringing to you guys for this year, for next year, is one that I was hoping I wouldn't have to bring until later, but I have a 2.5 car garage outside, which is my shed, which is where I store my skid steer during the winter, all my lawn equipment, snow removal equipment. We were optimistic that wouldn't get torn down anytime soon. It was supposed to make it through this winter. It's not. They want to tear it down next month. So I'm going from basically a 2.5, 3-car garage storage area to I've taken one garage bay from the sheriff. At the end of this year, for capital expense projects, I also have 2 new pieces of skid steer equipment coming. I have a vehicle that was purchased for my department because my department has never had a truck before. So I'm gonna have nowhere to put all that stuff. My hope, where we have the dirt parking lot outside right now, which is our temporary solution for the county vehicle parking, is I'd like to build a pole shed there at some point in time, because I'm not gonna have enough storage. And again, this was addressed too, because like you've asked where the TV studio is going. My department's still staying in the basement, because there's been no, anywhere built for maintenance in the new building. But there was nowhere to add it other than a few, janitor closets and storage rooms and such. But I am gonna need somewhere to store my equipment. I don't wanna keep a skid steer, snow sweeper, and a snow pusher and all that stuff just in the parking lot all the time. So that'll be something that I'll be bringing up again too, that most of this is just forewarning for you guys, the stuff that I'll be bringing up to your attention. Because right now I'm gonna put what I can into the sheriff's bay, and then all of my off-season equipment I'm gonna bring out to the evidence storage out by the healthcare center for all my snow equipment now, and then my lawn equipment when it comes time for winter to roll around.
Are there how many bays are being provided in the new jail, the new sheriff's
The
department?
new sheriff's department will have one bay, but it's a large, one large room that there's a roll-up door coming off of Dewey Street that they'll pull into a big, large, covered parking. That's where the sheriff's department will have their new stuff. There's 4 current bays in the existing, but again, as the plan that you guys haven't seen yet was written, which is still very fluid, was I would probably take over 2 of those and then take over part of the existing jail for storage of paper products and whatnot. But I can't bring my trucks up there, the skid steer and all that other stuff. 2 of the other bays would end up going to either land management or health department or whoever else might be over there for storage of their stuff that they need. So there's, again, the plan for this building is on paper, but it's still very fluid because nothing's been set in stone. There's no money to do anything with this building yet. So
As part of your proposals that will be forthcoming, will you have outsourced solutions also to consider? So we don't have to buy new equipment, we can have somebody else do the lawn mowing and snow plowing, that sort of thing?
that's not really something that I've looked at. That's why I got a staff for myself. I mean, mind you, I got 2 maintenance guys right now and a custodian. I've looked before when I first started this job at, let's say, outsourcing the janitorial issue. The only issue that really popped up with that was a lot of HIPAA compliant stuff. If, let's say, I hired an outside custodian company that came in and then had to go clean the judge's office, the district attorney's office, and the human services director's office. I don't know if it's going to be the same person every day coming in there, and there's usually confidential stuff everywhere else. So it was much easier to do a background check on a county employee.
Yeah, no,
And that
my
we knew was
suggestion would
going
just
in
be,
there.
let's
But
make
if
sure
you're
we do
looking
our
at,
due
like-
diligence on, making sure we get an outsourced solution so we don't have to use CapEx money to buy equipment that somebody else can store at their facility. And we don't have to end up building another building that's gonna be really expensive.
Yeah.
I think it's, finances is going to be very stretched with everything else we got going on. We don't necessarily have to do it long-term, but I think, using outsourced services for lawn care and snow removal is definitely an option we should pursue.
I can make a note and get some prices on that as well. But then it's just a matter of trying to figure out what, for my staff as well, a good portion of the winter
Yeah,
they're
I'm not
doing stuff.
suggesting we would outsource the staffing. We keep
Yep.
the staffing as it is, and, maybe we can use that as a way to not have to increase the staffing as much, but certainly something that is prudent for us to be looking at is where we can outsource, so we're not spending hundreds of $1,000s on a skid steer that we don't need to, and we can use that money to support the current staff we have.
All right, and next, a few of the projects that are
I
existing.
got one quick
Oh,
question.
Go ahead.
I might have missed this earlier. In the new building, they knew they were gonna tear down your garage, correct?
Yep, that was,
So where were they gonna put you?
that's why I got 2 bays for the sheriff's department. But at
That's-
that point in time, my department didn't have a vehicle either. Maintenance doesn't have, I have a 4-wheeler. That's the only vehicle I have here. So when we go to Menards, the hardware store, the post office, any of that stuff, we use personal vehicles. Track mileage, stuff like that, and then get reimbursed for that. But now, last year, it was approved that my department got a truck. Hasn't arrived yet. I've ordered it and paid for it and whatnot, but it's
like the sheriff had brought up yesterday in law enforcement, where they're ordered, they're paid for, but a lot of them are back ordered. It's just not here yet. Skid steer, the county doesn't own. I rent that through Comro every year. I get a fairly good price on that because I store it inside. I don't put a lot of hours on it, stuff like that. And it's like $2,000 a year that I pay for the skid steer for the 6 months that I have it. But like, again, it was addressed that my shed was going down, and it's not just me. It was the sheriff's department had one bay on the far side of that garage, which they use for storage, which they have in turn moved all their stuff to their evidence shed out by the healthcare center. Right now, it's me and veterans department that are really scrambling to find where to go, because he has a large bay on the back of that building that is full of wheelchairs, walkers, bedpans, hospital beds, that he has no idea where to put that right now.
There's no way you could have worked with any other department to get a truck, we have quite a few vehicles here.
Yeah, and
there's
we
no way to
have,
share a vehicle for the limited time that you're gonna use it.
yeah, and we have done that before. We've used either the land management trucks or stuff like that as needed to go pick up stuff at Menards or whatnot. But over the course of the 7 years that I've been here, it was just more prudent to look at, in my opinion, getting a vehicle for my department. I wasn't super keen on having my guys drive all the time in their personal vehicles, because then I also brought up the issue of the liability on who's responsible for that vehicle if my guys got in an accident between here and on Alaska in their personal vehicle on work hours. I'm adding one truck. It was a $30,000 expense. It wasn't a huge, I don't have as many as, like I said, land management. Of course, most of theirs are not putting as many miles, I think, as I'll end up putting on ours anyway. But so there's quite a few things that we're looking at, and like I said, my department is looking at a few different options for storage and stuff. But even we've looked at right now trying to do, because I just had an email from the health department looking for somewhere to store some of their stuff. Storage is an issue in this building, which is one of the reasons that the new building was looked at too. But whether we ended up renting a storage container to put outside because the health department has an abundance of COVID-related stuff. The veterans has all of that other, like I said, the medical equipment that they lease or loan out to various people here in the community. Trying to figure out where to put all that is problematic at the moment, just because of the fact that the shed is coming down a lot sooner than anticipated. Current year's capital expense project. So for right now, we planted 6 new trees out front of the building. 4 or 5 years ago, we had to cut down all of the ash trees that were out there because they'd all had that emerald ash. They were dying and just falling down. We tore all those down. Then last year, the whole front of the building got ripped up for the new storm drain system. Then this year, we planted 6 new trees. I planted 2 lindens and 2 different types of maples. So in a few years, there'll be at least a little bit more color and shade, which will be the rear of the building at that point, but at least it's on Main Street and it will look a little bit more appropriate than just a giant grass. We also have a generator going into the sheriff's impound shed. That'll run, because we store a portable morgue out there, and it is in use from time to time. And if the power goes out and that's in use, we would like to continue that to keep running. So that generator, that we have a pad going out there right now. The generator's already been delivered and it's sitting out there waiting to be installed. So that should be done by the time we have the next property meeting. There is a brick overhang that comes into the sheriff's department on the south side of the building. That is also coming down. There's significant water damage and it's peeling away from the building, so we decided to take that down before it decides to come down on its own. So that'll be coming down, and then we'll just be putting a canvas canopy over the top of that door. So that one should be happening here in the next few weeks. And then we did have an issue, which is what I'll be bringing those that want to go into the boiler room to look at. We had an issue with the chiller over the past month. The chillers are new within the past 4 years. The boilers are new in the past 10. All of the piping that runs from them through the rest of the building is about 45 years old. It's all cast. We've already replaced most of the cast here in the building that were drains, because it was just I'd never seen it anywhere else before, but I would touch the top of the cast iron drains in the building, my hands would go right through them. And they were sewage drains running over dispatch and stuff like that at the time. But now I have the cast iron that feeds the chiller system. Over the past few years, I've added more and more filter systems in there because I'm getting parts of that pipe running through the, breaking off on the inside. Last week, I pulled out 10 gallons worth of sludge out of there. That's just old piping. I'll kind of show you guys what it looks like in there, but it plugged up one of my pumps. That made the pumps run too hard, which in turn overheated my breakers, which in turn almost caught on fire. So I'll show you guys that because that'll be another expense, capital project for later this year for this particular building. Again, this has been addressed with the previous property committee over the past 7-8 years. Small things that we've done here and there to take care of that, but new things to try to keep this building as operational as possible. Because like you said, it is a good building. It is still standing. The bones are fine, but it's the veins and arteries that are having some issues. So other than that, I've had no major issues the past month. Nothing's other than that kind of stuff there. Nothing else. I mean, we've had some pretty bad days here before in the past. So right now, everything is going as smooth as it can. I've been touring the new building as it's going up too, trying to get an idea of all where my stuff is going to be, where the current electrical systems are running underground, all that stuff and all that. I'm quite happy with even the plumbing chases that they talked about in the jail are going to be quite more efficient for me. If you went through the jail yesterday, I don't know if they opened any of those plumbing things for you, but most of my plumbing access in the jail are doors about this big. To try to get in there to do most of the work, and this one it's a hallway that I can get to everything, so that'll be much more efficient. Other than that, if you have any questions.
Will they be able to secure the boardroom and the conference rooms in the new building? Can they set that aside? Can they?
Sort of like for after hours, if
Yeah,
someone
after
wants.
hours. Can they
Yes,
secure the rest of the building?
that's been addressed. So if we have something that's after hours, those rooms will be accessible, and that's really about it.
And then they
They're
have
not going to be able to come in and roam up and down the court
Right.
hallways or into the sheriff's
Right.
department,
And they have
stuff like
restrooms
that.
available in that section too, then, I assume?
Correct.
Good.
All right, nothing else?
Thanks, Jeremy.
I'm here every day.
Next is our Highway Commissioner, Al Rinka. Thank you, Al.
All right. Okay, morning, guys.
Morning.
So yeah, a couple weeks ago, we had highway committee meeting, our first meeting. I was just getting our new highway committee up to speed on the storage building that we've been talking about at highway for the last few years. Talking about the building site, and Dan Schreiner actually made the suggestion about the building site location, moving it from where we were proposing right next to our highway office, which would require quite a bit of site prep and earthwork and storm sewer and detention pond and all that, and to possibly moving it up on the hill in this field that Trempealeau County owns that's already flat and would require far, far less site work. So basically, I'm here today to kind of talk about how the highway department could potentially acquire this land from the county to as a future building site for a storage building. Right now, there's no plans in the works to do the building anytime really soon, but this would be one step in the process to help accelerate the financial need for this building. This would probably save us around $600,000 in site prep work by moving this location up on this nice flat field.
Al, could you just briefly talk about the perception and the need for a building to house
Yep.
the county-owned equipment?
Yep. So yeah, I gave a presentation a couple of years ago to County Board about this building, but to kind of recap that, the Highway Department has lots and lots of equipment. I mean, trucks and graders and bulldozers and plow trucks and road sweepers and vacuum. I mean, the list goes on and on. And in that presentation that I showed a couple years ago, that there was a flyover aerial of that showing all the equipment that sits out. I mean, for example, we just wrote a check for $460,000 last year for a new John Deere grader. That thing lives outside. It sits outside. The sun beats on it, the rain, the snow, the hydraulic hoses are getting, beat by those UV rays. It causes those hydraulic hoses to crack. All of our electric, connections on skid steers and tractors, and, they get corrosion in there from the weathering elements because they sit outside. So the need for the building is we have more equipment than we have roof space to store this equipment under. And we got to get this equipment underneath a roof. There's maintenance costs involved with that, obviously. We don't track what we spend on maintenance due to sitting outside. We don't have an activity code like that, but we know we spend tens of thousands of dollars a year for maintenance related to just weather exposure. Not to mention the value that you can't hardly put a dollar value on when that piece of equipment is out of service, that it's not out there performing its job. There is a value associated to that as well. But so that's the need for the building, is to get our equipment underneath a roof sooner than later. So I guess some discussion on it.
Can you just give us a proposed size of the building and how that'll be configured?
So the size of the building, I should have brought that presentation with me. I don't have that. I don't have it memorized, but the size of the lot here, we had talked 5 acres. I came up, this is about 2 scale on this drawing in front of you, 450 feet by 480 feet. The footprint of the building was 300 feet by 130 feet, I want to say, sounds about right. And it would have a wash bay on it. So it would take up a portion of this lot here. We just kind of came up with 5 acres as a nice kind of even acreage for extra space around the perimeter of the building to drive vehicles around, for snow removal, to sometimes park stage vehicles outside around the perimeter of the building. The building estimate that I had done about a year and a half ago was, everything came to $4.3 million. Of that, $600,000 was for the site work.
Now, it's my understanding that this is property owned by the county.
Correct.
And historically, what used to be the county farm is now land that's leased to farmers in the area. And because I have a tendency to ignore certain interpolitical climates between different departments in the county, I would think this is a no-brainer and would be easily done. There's just a nagging voice in the back of my head that says maybe not. But if this committee decides that we need to move forward with this project, the first thing that needs to be done is developing and cultivating a relationship between the healthcare center, which has control over the leasing of the land. I'm assuming any revenue generated by that acreage lease goes to the healthcare center's budget. So we would essentially be taking acreage out of their anticipated revenues. I don't remember total acreage that the healthcare center oversees, but I would think that this proposal is a small percentage of what they have control over. And I guess eager to hear what the rest of the committee thinks, but I also know from experience we can cut our costs significantly over time if we take some effort to protect our investment in equipment. It seems like traditionally we make the expenditure and then we kind of ignore the stuff afterwards, and it over time generates a lot of accelerated and unnecessary expenditures.
Hey, Al, how many vehicles do you need to store, and how many would still be outside, given the building that you're anticipating? And then the follow-up question is, are there other options besides taking the land away from the county that would generate revenue and build more or less a lean-to style shed, something a farmer would build with an open side along some of the property there? Have you looked at other of those options, and can you give us an idea what that looks like?
Yeah, so as far as your first question, the building that we have already kind of drafted up and designed is big enough to house everything, so there would be nothing outside.
How many vehicles is that?
Oh, how many vehicles? I don't even know. I don't have that presentation with me, but there's 5 graders. There's it's probably around 30 vehicles.
20 to 30, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, you could drive in there right now today and just look and see what sits out. I mean, it's around that 30-ish mark, I would say.
It's also, Al, something too, is not just vehicles for the winter, but in the summer, when you take all the wings off and all that, you got a place to, they usually sit outside and the sun does rot. It's hard on the hoses and stuff like that, just moving them constantly because you don't have enough space. You do work from experience. A lot of the fittings get busted, and here you would save money down the road.
Yeah, no, I totally understand the need. I think you're right, spot on, that you know, we're throwing money away on, you know, unneeded maintenance. Totally get that.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure, again, in all things prudence, we do our due diligence, and if we end up building a building, it's costing us a lot of additional dollars down the road to maintain that building. Whereas if there's other options such as lean-tos, you know, 3-sided buildings that gets it out of the sun, the UV rays, those sorts of things, I think we need to look at that as an option. Not saying we wouldn't still consider a building and the land, but I think we've got to do all those due diligences. So I do appreciate you bringing this to us because we're spending too much money on maintenance. We got to figure that out.
Yep. So as far as all those other options, we have exhausted pretty much all those already. We have retrofitted, converted some existing cold storage buildings there. 2 years ago, we took a cold storage building. We spent a lot of money in insulating it and heating it and repaving the floor, putting a floor drain in, so we could, in the wintertime, bring our snowplow trucks in there to thaw it overnight, so when the drivers hop in them the next morning at 4 o'clock to get out and plow, they've got that. But all that equipment that was in there, that stuff that's now sitting outside. We looked at doing lean-tos on some other buildings. The terrain of the ground at the highway department, it's on a hill. So the one building that it could have maybe worked on, there's a hill that pretty much kind of killed that idea. We had to have roof clearance. As far as just building a freestanding 3-sided structure, as you talk about, like see farmers doing for their horses and things like that, just to get a roof overhead. Yeah, could you do that? Yeah, it would probably help getting it out of the sun and the rain. But if you're going to go to the extent of building anything, do it right the first time is my philosophy. Build a fully enclosed building. I initially, and I still want to build a heated building where it would be maintained at about 45 to 50 degrees. You know, some people may say, well, why do you need any heat at all? I mean, that's something that we could still continue a discussion on and eliminate, strike down if that was the deal breaker to get a building erected sooner than later. But yeah, really just I would want a fully enclosed building, and just to help with security purposes too, getting these vehicles fully locked up inside a building.
I think one of the things, before we move forward, that we need to have in the way of information is what kind of revenue impact are we gonna have to the healthcare center by removing 5 acres from their leasing program, and compare that to the estimated cost of site prep on the original site. Because, over time, lost revenue may make it in our best interest to stick with the first site. It looks like, from this aerial view, that at least in my uninitiated brain, it'd be more convenient for operations if the building was where it was proposed initially.
Where is that at, Dan?
That's between, if you look at it's between this shed and this shed, basically across from the administrative building.
That would make the most sense.
Between the road and the
Railroad
tracks.
tracks, yeah.
Yeah.
Al, I want to come look at it, at the site, because I've never been there. I mean, I've been drove by, but I've never been in and around. So I'd love to be able to have
Yeah,
you
that'd
walk
be-
me through what you're
Yeah.
thinking, what you're looking at.
Yep.
So you can send me an email or what time you're available, and I'll try to make it work. in my
I can
schedule,
even
but
forward you an email of a link to that presentation that
Yeah.
has the aerial flyover.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And to answer Dick's question, I mean, we looked at that, and Al said 600,000 plus to fill in that area, just for the fill. And here you have an area of 5 acres, which is, they get $200 an acre a year roughly.
This is level on that.
So it's $1,000 a year. You'd lose by, if you took the whole 5 acres. Not even saying Al would use the whole 5 acres.
But there's a driveway in there too.
Yeah, and that's a secondary one. You can approach it from,
Yeah,
the-
the driveway I threw in there because my guys are saying, well, if you're gonna do that, let's even get a driveway going out to Q. Threw that driveway in there.
that's just an add-on.
Yeah, that's an
But the
add-on,
5
yeah.
acres, you're losing $1,000 a year compared to putting $600,000 into
Yeah.
hauling dirt in. So,
Well,
I mean, there's
I'm-
other things to look at, but I mean, I don't think it hurts at all to go approach the county hospital and say, we've always worked well with them at the highway department, and ask
Well,
them if they'd be
you
willing
know,
to
I guess
go
what-
along with it.
Let me throw this at you. I'm chairman of the board of trustees out there now, so, obviously,
How
if it's.
convenient. How convenient.
Well, it may be a conflict of interest too, I don't know. But as, I think if we, working along with the highway department or well, you guys, how many? 2 of you? No, 1 of you, just 1 of you on the
Two.
highway, two people on the highway department, the highway committee. I think we need to have a firm idea in mind of what needs to be done before we approach the board of trustees, though. I think it has to, and I guess the first question that I have is, where is this $6 million coming from? We're talking about having a shortfall of, $2.5 million to renovate this building. That $5.5 million?
5.7.
Is pretty well spent, the way it looks like to me.
Yeah.
And so I guess funding has to be something that has to be addressed before we take it too much further, I believe.
I agree, but I'm just saying, it doesn't hurt to get permission to, if you got a place to get the land, say, we got a place to build it, and we can work down the road. As long as we know we have that, then you can move forward and say, okay, if we don't get it built this year, we'll get it built next year. Maybe we'll save money up for 2 or 3 years and then build it, so we don't have to go into that hole. But if you don't have the property to build it on, and
Well, why don't we do this? David, you want to look at the area out there, which makes sense, because you don't know it. Audie, you're completely aware of what's out there, and I don't know, Dan, you've.
Over time, I've been there.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm reasonably aware of the property, the lower area that you were talking about here. That building would have to be shaped differently, wouldn't it, Al? That's more
No,
along,
the current building we have designed we wouldn't have to change that at all.
that would fit in that spot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. That makes it a lot easier then. And I can approach the board of trustees on this, obviously, next meeting. do you feel we're at that position?
Well, I think at the very least, we try to get a determination on what kind of revenue is generated.
Yeah, and we could find that out very quickly. I mean, that's not gonna be hard. They should know what the monthly rent is on that piece of ground.
It's $200. They get 200 or
200 an acre?
225 an acre, right there.
That seems like a ballpark figure.
Yeah, that's $200 to $300 for, depending on the soil type. You know, high end is probably $300. So you're talking, you know, $1,500 a year.
Well, one other
Yeah.
point too is that on that first site that Al had picked, won't have to bump up against any railroad right away.
The railroad was creating lots of problems, therefore, so I'd love to be able to move away from that railroad because of the stormwater drainage. That caused us to have to dig these huge detention ponds over on the other side of the driveway for stormwater to run into. So the earthwork is just tremendous just to handle the stormwater because that railroad is right there. I mean, that's why just the building site prep is about 600,000 here. There's zero, other than stripping topsoil is all there would be on this here. I mean, it will literally be a over $500,000 savings to move up onto this field. And the other thing I would suggest too is, you know, get the land secured now if we can do that, but then tell, you know, the health center that, you know, we're going to leave it undisturbed and they can farm it and rent it until we're ready to break ground in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now until we can secure funding. And it's not 6 million, Dick. You just kind of said there it was 600,000 or looking at saving. The building was 4.3 million.
Well, I stand corrected, thank you.
Yeah. So, but depending on when we build it, inflation, material costs have gone up. I mean, the building might be just the building alone could be over 4 million in 2, 3 years from now. Who knows? But. You know,
Well,
and then we
you know,
might have to look at cutting, heating out of the building or whatever.
I guess if this committee thinks that would be a good route to go, I certainly have no problem putting this on the agenda for the trustees, and they can give me a figure, but I can also point out that the plan would be to secure that commitment on that site, so that at some point in time that when it was appropriate to build there, then the highway committee would be assured that that's available. I assume this is what you're kind of looking for, Al. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, future planning doesn't necessitate us having to do anything.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt to ask the question, at least get it put out there.
Yeah.
I do think we need to do a lot of due diligence before. I mean, you mentioned it. We have a huge budget shortfall that the finance committee is going to have to figure out. You know, we're working on that, right? What are we going to do? So anything that can be pushed out, I know it may cost more in the long run to do that a little bit, but where do we get the funds, right? Where do we get it? It's a real big consideration. So I get it, Al. Or you're
Al,
spending a lot of money and you don't want to, so.
I don't know how much money you have sitting right now in your machine fund. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's about 3.6 million.
Okay. I think a lot of the work that has been done out there, improvements, has been done through machine fund money.
All of it's through machine
Yeah,
fund.
and so that's been a useful thing to work with, you know, but that's not $4 million. And plus, that's used to replace machinery and, you know, update things as they go, so.
And maintenance.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to regret throwing this out at you guys probably, but we've got a place up at Bemidji, Minnesota, and we drive by this lot every time we go to our place. And it's a privately owned company, and they have millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment sitting there. And every year we drive by there in the spring, and it's all most of it's underwater. And then as it gets towards construction season, they dig it out, they pull it out of there and put it to work. And the equipment looks weathered, there's no question about it. And it would be interesting to know from a company like that how much they build into maintenance due to that type of storage. I mean, this is a huge lot. I'm just befuddled by all the equipment on this lot. But,
It would be nice to be able to get a semi-accurate account of the current situation and what it does to accelerate depreciation and cost in lost time. You know, I don't have a lot of knowledge when it comes to data and how we track things, but I suspect that if I can imagine it, somebody's already doing it somewhere, computer-wise.
I would be surprised. And I make the comment, and not because that's the place to leave equipment, because I appreciate even keeping a car inside, you know. And cars are designed to weather a lot of weather, but the car doesn't have, they have the rubber tires, but they don't have all the hoses to deal with and so forth. And we know that's a big expense. Anyway, I will follow up on this with the healthcare center then. And then maybe if we get some kind of response, then we can put it on the agenda then, Dan, for this meeting then.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
That's kind of all we're really trying to accomplish today is just move it to the next step. Yeah.
All righty then. Any other questions or comments regarding this topic? Thanks, Al.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Well, if you feel you can get information, let's put this item back on the agenda for next meeting. David, do you have anything you'd like to see on the agenda for the next meeting?
Not at this time.
Okay.
What is our cutoff for getting that on the agenda?
At least a week before.
At least a week before.
At least a week before. Cleared with him.
And
Oh, huh?
in rare emergencies, we can work around that week.
For
but-
public notice and all that, I get it, yeah.
And with this new system now where it's going on the SharePoint.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, I don't want like to do a lot of amendments and then upload them to the SharePoint.
What did you have on, from Tim Robertson that he wanted to see on the agenda next meeting? I think you said you made a note.
I didn't make any note on this.
What did you make a note on?
Was that the phone system? The stakeholders meeting.
Yeah,
That.
stakeholders
But that
and
probably can just go under his regular,
his update?
yeah. 'Cause I
Okay,
was planning on taking all A, B, C, D, E off.
okay. There was something from Kurt Berner that should be on next agenda's
That's the
meeting.
construction bulletins, I have that
Okay.
down. I'm taking,
The drawings, the plans,
yeah. Oh, he's
He was
gonna
gonna
do that
catch us
ahead
up.
of time.
and the project plan for the renovation and the moving of departments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
He was gonna send us the stuff so we can look at it and
Right.
bring us all up to speed exactly how it's gonna look.
I'm
So when
planning
we
on
talk about
taking-
something, we know where it is and what it is.
We needed the items that Jeremy brought up that have to be addressed now, because when this starts, land records, public health, child support, are all gonna be moved, so we need to know where they're going. Okay,
Exactly. So we know where we have space and where we don't have space, and who needs something, who doesn't.
I guess I have a hard time figuring that out because it's like, it's being attached to this building, but right on the other side of this wall is where the entrance is gonna be, and where the bathrooms are on both floors are gonna be over there. I don't know how much displacement when they're coming up against the wall, against land.
it'll be interesting.
I know, well, they're gonna have to fill in the windows, I know that, but stuff like that.
If there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting at 9 minutes after 11.